Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks will likely be looking towards the transfer portal after the dismissal of Trayshawn Holden. On today's episode of the Ducks on 503 podcast, we're going to look at 5 potential targets that Oregon could land in the transfer portal. I'm your host, Dominic Peterson. This is the Ducks on 503 podcast, where we talk all things Oregon football. Whether you're a first-time viewer or you're a long-time viewer, kindly ask that you go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button down below to help grow the channel. But most importantly, guys, telling your friends and family about the podcast, your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your aunts, your uncles, you guys get the point. Telling them about the podcast right here is really helps them grow most. Really appreciate everybody who locks in. As always, go Ducks. Let's get into it, guys. We got a big episode on tap. 5 potential transfer wide receiver targets Oregon could potentially land. So I know what some of you guys might be screaming at me through the screen, and I get it. I get it. You're saying we're already over the scholarship limit, Dominic. Our wide receiver room is absolutely loaded. Why on earth would we go after another wide receiver? It makes no sense. Trayshawn's a great player, but we don't technically need him. And I get it, guys. Without a doubt, there are some incredible wide receivers, very talented, explosive. I love the wide receivers we have in the room. Whole bunch of great wide receivers on the depth chart, no doubt. But Oregon went out and got Trayshawn Holden for a reason, guys, and that is because he's what's called a proven commodity. In college football, proven commodities are everything on a depth chart. We've seen Chase Cota come in and be that proven commodity that Oregon really needed at some points in the season. And that's still a need. Okay, it's still a need. Dante Thornton, Chase Cota, those are big wide receivers that helped this team facilitate that wide receiver room that are gone now this year. And the Ducks need to add a veteran playmaker with some production, okay? And they don't have a lot of that. Besides their top 2 receivers, they don't really have a lot of that. Now, Trayshawn Holden was going to provide some of that. At Alabama, 25 receptions, 331 yards, 6 touchdowns. That's certainly a plug-and-play guy. That's certainly Chase Cota numbers right there last season. Now, he comes in and puts up some catches and makes some plays, right? Now, your current wide receiver room after the dismissal of Trayshawn Holden, you got Troy Franklin, okay? Number 1 wide receiver, right? That's going to be your number 1, no doubt. Chris Hudson, he's a proven guy. Locked in. This is where it kind of starts to fall off for me. Now, you got Tez Johnson coming in. He came from Troy. 800-plus yards receiving last year. Really good wide receiver. I don't have really much doubts about him. But this is the kind of a league up. Pac-12 play. We're going to see how that translates. Now, it really kind of gets questionable for me as far as production goes. Not as far as talent, not as far as potential. I'm not saying that. I think these guys will be very special, but Jerion Dickey, 5-star wide receiver, freshman coming in. Ashton Kozart, 4-star wide receiver coming in. Kyler Casper, 4-star wide receiver, played a little bit last year. Those guys are not proven commodities. As much as Trayshawn Holden, as much trust is everything for a coach. How much does Dan Lanning trust young guys like Jerion, Ashton, and Kyler to really step in? Now, Kyler, on the other hand, played a little bit last year. He gets another year of development, so he could be a step ahead. But a 5-star like Jerion Dickey, could he be a guy where you can just plug and play? Listed number 2 wide receiver in 247 Sports. They're listed that high for a reason, and they could potentially come and plug and play. Now, we don't see a lot of 5-stars come in and just start playing. That's not common. It's not very common. You have to be really special to just do that and just come and play. But the wide receiver position, I definitely see a guy like Jerion Dickey being able to get his name out there. A guy like Kyler Casper in year 2 to develop, get a little bit stronger, know the playbook, know the room, get adjusted a little bit better and take off. You can see that with 4-star guys. Another guy, Ashton Kozart, really good wide receiver, route runner, can get downfield for those deep passes. Then we got Justice Lowe. Okay, this guy never really played last year, mostly on special teams here and there. Josh Delgado, again, a guy that never really played, been on the team for a little bit while, and possibly Roderick Pleasant. There's been talk that Roderick Pleasant could shift into the wide receiver room, really fast guy, track guy, but again, another young freshman, not really a proven commodity, and that's what you lost with Trayshawn Holden. So I think it's pretty essential that Dan Lanning adds another guy in this wide receiver room. And just imagine, I mean, I always say this, you can never have too many wide receivers or running backs. No, never too many skill guys. And the reason for that is because we've seen injuries happen, especially in football, especially late in the year. You just need the depth. You need guys you can trust and put out there. And Trayshawn Holden gave you a little bit of that. Of course, you got a number one guy in Troy Franklin. But besides that, you need proven guys. So I want to shout out Zachary Neal at Ducks Wire for putting up a great article on his website. So if you guys want to go check out that, he put up a dozen candidates on his article. I took a little bit from that and made my own form of it and gave my 5 best candidates on what I think, kind of gave my own opinions on off of his list. So a great reference list that he gave out. So shout out Zachary Neal there. Never the doubt. Let's go ahead and get in my 5 candidates I think Oregon could potentially land in the transfer portal. So number 1, I got Iagi Hall from the Texas Longhorns, standing 6 foot 395 pounds, really good size there. 247 Sports rating got him as a 4-star, 0.9788, really good. Collegiate stats. This is the thing, he hasn't really done anything yet in college. Alabama 3 games, only 4 catches, 72 yards, 0 touchdowns. Texas 3 games, 1 catch for 7 yards. I mean, that's not very impressive, and he was suspended from the team indefinitely back in August for a parking incident out there in Texas. So I'm not sure exactly, what's been going on. It seems like a lot of things have been behind the scenes. I don't think it's a talent thing with him. But I do think that if Oregon was able to land him and get him under the right coach and get him under the right culture where he's not doing dumb things or getting kicked off teams and suspended, this kid's talented, man. There's a reason why he went to Alabama and Nick Saban wanted him. So Trayshawn Holden was from Alabama. We've seen Dan Lanning try to reach out there in the SEC country. I guess Texas not SEC yet, Big 12, but still, he was able to grab that guy. So maybe that's another guy that Dan Lanning is able to go after. Another guy on the list I have here is Gary Bryant Jr. from the USC. Gary Bryant standing 5'11", 180 pounds, so look like he's a smaller, shiftier type wide receiver. Other than like if we're comparing him to Aggie Hall here, so a little bit smaller wide receiver here, 3-star, 0.8900, so cusping 4-star status there. Gary Bryant. Collegiate stats, 18 games, 53 catches, 645 yards, 7 touchdowns. So like we were saying, we want a proven commodity. He's got better numbers in college than Aggie Hall. I mean, he's just a little more proven. And he's right there on the West Coast. Might be a little bit more easier to get him. Now, I don't know. I have no source on Gary Bryant on where he would want to go. But if he's looking to stay on the West Coast and stay at a successful program, where better else play to go than Oregon, right? So that's another one there. Number 3, I got Dominic Blaylock. Shout out the name Dominic. Dominic Blaylock from the Georgia Bulldogs. So Dan Lanning came from Georgia, right? Has a relationship with a lot of those guys still on that roster. Dominic might be one of those guys. 6'1", 205 pounds, really good size. 3-star, 0.8700 rating from 247 Sports. Collegiate stats, he has played in 29 games, 35 catches, 548 yards, 6 touchdowns. Again, really good stats, really good proven stats. Playing in the SEC, putting up 500 plus yards, 6 touchdowns. Just can't imagine what you do out here in the Pac-12. I mean, if they were to get Dominic Blaylock, that would be a really good addition. And we've seen Dan Lanning reach into SEC country, get Trayshawn Holden, a DB like Kyrie Jackson, right? And bring him over to the West Coast. Get a guy like Bo Nix from Auburn, the quarterback, and make him successful out here. He's bring linebacker from Iowa. I would have no surprise if Dominic Blaylock became an Oregon Duck. There would be no surprise. Another one going down on the list, number 4 here, I got Warren Thompson from Arkansas Razorbacks. So sticking in SEC country. I'm kind of basing this list a little bit off the history of what Dan Lanning and the demographic of the map, like where he's really trying to target players. And it seems like he's really interested in bringing SEC guys over here. Guys maybe in the SEC that the roster is just really talented, and there's guys ahead of him and you can't get no plays on it. But here on the Oregon roster, it's a perfect fit. Or maybe they're just out there and they're from the West Coast. They're a really talented kid. They try to go to the SEC and they just don't like life out there and they want to come back to the West Coast and be closer to home. That could be another thing. And I think that's what you're starting to see Dan Lanning trying to recruit and trying to scalp off of the SEC, one of the best conferences in football. That's a smart move, in my opinion. So Warren Thompson, Arkansas Razorback, 6'3", 205 pounds, another really good sized wide receiver. I think that's what Oregon kind of needs after losing Dante Thornton. Dante Thornton stood around 6'5", really big wide receiver. Warren Thompson, 4-star, according to 247 Sports, 0.9361 rating. Collegiate stats, he played at Florida State, 9 games there, had 11 catches for 195 yards and a touchdown. Not really too impressive there. He goes to Arkansas, plays 19 games, 31 catches, 482 yards, 4 touchdowns. So definitely stepped up his production in a big way, going to a different school. Only thing that worries me about him, which I don't know much of, is why is he jumping school so much? I don't know, especially after having a good career year at Arkansas and putting up some pretty good numbers. Maybe he just wants a bigger role. I don't know if you can get a bigger role with Troy Franklin already being your number one, but we'll see. Braylon Brown is another one. Last but not least, Braylon Brown from Ole Miss. 6'3", 185 pounds. Another really good wide receiver. Another one from the SEC. 247 Sports transfer rating got him a 4-star, 0.9421 rating. Collegiate stats, 4 games, 1 catch, 11 yards. Now, not very successful in the stats. Not sure why 247 Sports has him rated as high as they do, to be honest, with the stats like that. Not sure if it was because of injury. But I'm just saying, these guys are in the SEC. These guys have probably been recruited in the past by Dan Lanning. And there's probably past relationships there, no doubt. I definitely see Dan Lanning being able to work some magic. And also Junior Adams, the wide receiver coach, is going to be in this. And that's why I have the USC wide receiver Gary Bryant Jr. I mean, Junior Adams has all kind of ties on the West Coast. Very talented kid. And Junior Adams knows how to work his magic. So we got 5 guys here that I definitely think I would keep my eyes on these guys. Iaghi Hall from Texas, Iaghi Hall from Texas and Alabama, I guess, if you want to say. Then we got Gary Bryant Jr. from USC, Dominic Blaylock from Georgia, Warren Thompson from Arkansas, and Braylon Brown from Ole Miss. So there you guys have it. Those are 5 potential wide receiver targets that Oregon could land. The transfer portal, again, you can't really enter your name till May 1st, but I think Dan Lanning he's gonna have to go find a guy. Like I said, I put my case out there that, I like the wide receiver room, but they're an injury or 2. If they're 2 injuries away from really having a thin wide receiver room. I mean, if I was Dan Lanning, to be honest with you guys, I would add probably 2 wide receivers. And the guys that don't make it, I'm sorry, might have to find another place to play if they don't make the scholarship cut. And it's competition. That's what it is. You make your roster better through competition. And that's honestly what I would do. I'd add 2 guys if I was him. I mean, there's enough talented wide receivers in the portal to go get guys. And I like I said, you can never have too many wide receivers and running backs, in my opinion. All right, guys. So I really appreciate you guys for tuning in on another episode here. I'm your host, Dominic Peterson, host of the Ducks on 503 podcast. Kindly ask that you go ahead and hit that like, subscribe button down below. Telling your friends about the podcast always helps. Really appreciate you guys. As always, go Ducks. I'll see you in the next podcast, guys.